And we are live. Good morning, Joshua. How's it going?
Jens, good to be back with you, and happy Friday. Reverse Mental Fridays and Flat Cap Fridays. It's awesome to be back with you.
Yeah, I don't have flat cap today, so I have a normal cap. But I thought I will wear it. It need to fit a little bit to the t-shirt. So today is Connectors Day.
Yeah, well,
Connectors Friday.
you are the master connector, and I'm sure that the hat that you're wearing today says that you're also looking forward to your vacation that you've got coming up, because you're looking forward to spending a bit of time outside, out of your creation studio.
Yeah, I definitely do. I can tell you. I
Yeah.
have no idea how that will be because it's the first vacation this year. Literally the first, most probably 2 days in a row that I will take off. But that's how it is as an entrepreneur. I don't complain because it's the best time ever of my life. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. So take us away. What are we talking about before I say hello to a couple of people who are joining us already on the live stream?
Awesome, cool. Well, I know that you may think that it's not going to tie into what we're going to talk about today, but because we're spending a lot of time with her, we'll find a way to link it into what we've got on the cards today. So, what we'll be discussing today, Jens, is really about habits. And the question that I've lined up for us today is: what is a habit that you wish that you'd found or started earlier in your career?
Ooh.
And those of you who are tuning in on the live stream know that inside of this reverse mentor space, one of the things that Jens and I are passionate about is creating an environment where the leaders of today can learn from the leaders of tomorrow. And why there are two of us on the call and not one of us in this live stream is because we like to create a different generational perspective. So I'll fill the young thinkers' shoes, and Jens will fill the experienced thinkers' shoes, as we like to say. So Jens, let's hand the mic back to you. What is the one habit you maybe wish you'd started earlier in your career?
Live streaming. No, but it's true. It's no joke. It's definitely something I should have done earlier because it's so fun. But I wasn't feeling confident, which fits to the podcast episode which we launched today, by the way. So everyone going to the Reverse Mental Lab podcast and downloading the discussion where Joshua and I discuss confidence and how to build confidence. No, that's definitely something. And we will tie back to a couple of people on the live stream already. So in case you're watching this live or the recording, you're welcome to do that as well. Put down the habit you wish you would have started earlier. So let us know in the comments wherever you see this, and we will loop back to that and we will answer a couple of things, or we will tie this back to what we are discussing. If you see that live, of course, would be great if you could shoot that into the live stream, and we will directly bring you up on screen and feature you. But so for me, it's like two habits, definitely not just the live stream thing. Reading, number one. Reading is such a profound and super important thing in my life right now, though that I'm doing a lot of audiobooks and listening to audiobooks and listening to audio and video more than reading right now. But one of the biggest personal development steps I did through reading. And why I say that I should have done that earlier, I started with reading, when was it? When I was 24, 23, 24. I should have started that with 10 properly. I mean, not business book stuff, but reading. It's so important. And the other one I will reveal later. But let's get to you. What is the one habit you wished you had done or started earlier?
Yeah, so before sharing my habit, Jens, I just want to just double click on what you mentioned about reading and audiobooks. And it's quite interesting. I was listening to a podcast this week, and the featured guest was Jim Collins. And many people listening may be familiar with Jim's work, particularly around his books, Good to Great, Entrepreneurship, and then Entrepreneurship 2.0, which he released late last year. Yeah. And the interview where he was getting interviewed, and the podcast rather where he was getting interviewed, was with Brené Brown. And inside of that, he articulated why he actually prefers audiobooks to reading a physical book. And the reason he prefers audiobooks was, yes, he can do two things at once, but primarily it was because he can listen to an audiobook and identify with where he is to create a memory in his brain around what he was hearing or interpreting from listening to the book. And if you think about that, that links back to some of the discussions Jens and you and I have had around a memory palace and how you create and construct an environment inside of your brain around things that you want to remember. And, Jim is this world-renowned author as well. And it's just quite interesting to see someone who actually writes for a living and who researches for a living, but actually prefers listening to an audiobook simply because he can remember different things. And again, that's a small habit that he's developed, which has then enhanced his way of working and enhanced his way of thinking. So it's quite fascinating just how you mentioned that. But, from my point of view, I think one of the things that I wish that I'd maybe picked up on a habit slightly earlier in my career was the ability to think through things for yourself at a deeper level. And I think especially if you think about a young thinker, you're coming into the workplace and you may receive a lot of instructions or get asked to do a lot of tasks. And sometimes you just go about doing those tasks and you don't necessarily think through them at a deeper level. And then you go down a road, and it happened to me multiple times before I actually realized what I was doing, was you go down a road, you complete a task, but it's actually the wrong thing. And it's because you hadn't listened first and foremost in terms of why you were being asked to do that task. You hadn't applied your mind, or you actually hadn't thought through, how could I do this task differently to the way that I've been asked to do it? And it took me about, I would say, 12 months to get into that habit, and a number of performance reviews and challenging discussions with managers and things like that. But I think that if you actually take a step back and you think, hey, this is a simple habit, and it's not, necessarily questioning everything that you've got in front of you, but it's more just about saying, hey, why am I actually doing this? And what am I being asked to do? And the unlock came for me in terms of how that habit got brought to my attention was when a mentor and a good friend of mine said to me, Josh, I'm actually asking you to apply your mind. You've got a brain in your head, apply your thinking, and don't just go on what I'm asking you to do.
I love that. I've had the same when I was starting in my career, like when I was 16, 17. Now we're back. Seems.
We're back.
Hello?
Yeah.
Something dropped here. I don't know what it was, but that's what it is when it is live. So I was literally just saying that I've had an experienced person who gave me a similar experience, and who was saying like, "Hey, guy, you're here for thinking. You have hair growing on your head. That means there's not just water in it or air." That's how he said it to me, and I'm still connected to him, which is the most funny part. I learned so much from interaction and working with him at that time, which is so fascinating for me always when you work with people who give you this early on in your career. Says, hey, you need to think, even if I'm saying something to you and I'm the manager, you need to think yourself if that's the right thing to do, because I want you to challenge me as well. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and a lot of young thinkers may hear that and think, okay, but I do that anyway. But I want to encourage you to go a bit deeper when you say that you do that anyway, because when you think through something, what does that actually mean? It's not only just ticking, creating a to-do list and say, okay, I need to do A, I need to do B, and I need to do C. It's maybe saying, hey, if I start with C first, I can then combine A and B. And just because Jens has asked me to do something in this order doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right order. It may be the right order in terms of the way that he views the world. But if I bring a different perspective into it, it could maybe bring a different viewpoint to it. It could bring a different efficiency to it. And it also may unlock a totally different type of value if you think of a traditional business sense, around what that may look like in an extended time period. And I think that that's really one of the biggest things that I learned, was just around applying your mind. And so that's a habit that I sort of take into all of the engagements that I have now going forward. And for those of you who may have seen the blog that I released last night, was just around, there's almost like this stigma that society is creating about, preferring what we refer to as shallow and fast thinking over slow and deep thinking. And I think that that's got to do with instant gratification and social media and all of those types of things. But I'm rambling on here, Jens. What is the second habit that you wanted to raise?
Yeah, the hell is just breaking loose here. I don't know if you can hear that. It's raining like hell. So it's a perfect holiday start. So second habit, and that might sound super profound, but it's English. So for the people who don't know me, which is most probably everyone, or like the one or two listeners here, I started learning English, of course, in school, but German English, or learning German in English, learning English in German schools, let's take it the right way, in the 90s was slightly different than it is today. So it was literally, you have 2 hours per week English class and learn a little bit. And I was always super bad in English. Like, I sucked properly. So even today, it's like the people I still know from that time, they are laughing their ass off that I do everything in English, because they said, "Oh my God, you have been so bad," because they're native English speakers. It's fascinating, but it's really so. I started to learn English again when I was 27. So I didn't have school lessons in English from the age of 16 to 27. So it's literally 10 years, zero English, like 0, 0, 0, which means I almost started all over again. Of course, I was able to use a couple of words and introduce myself. And so I didn't start from zero, but almost. And I started with doing very, very small things. And this went into habits that, for example, in the beginning, I switched my phone, which was always on German, to English. And that sounds super profound, but I literally, and that's I don't know. I mean, it's like a couple of years back now. I switched my phone to English and have never switched back to German. My phone is in English since that time. My computer is set up in English. My camera is set up and everything I do is set up in English. My wife hates it when I have like the alarm clock in English and everything. Even our car is set up in English, which is ridiculous because we are only driving in Germany. But that's just a habit where I said, I want to go deeply into a language I don't understand properly and want to get better. And every small thing that I'm connected to that language will help me to get better. That also means that I'm getting worse in German, or because I'm not using it so often. But it's really this habit of doing the small things, which I think is the part of the habits in a different language, which helps you to do a lot of things in that language. So I then started with 27, going deeply into English. And of course, it took me a while to pick up. Today, I do everything in English. The only thing I do in German is, talking to family, talking to friends in Germany. But I'm listening only to English podcasts. I'm, if possible, watching English TV. Or at least I switch on Netflix, if I ever watch Netflix, to English. I'm reading all books in English. It's now that I even think that I need to do something in German again to get better in German, or let's say get to use it a little bit more in the professional world as well, because I couldn't do this while we do right now, super fast thinking in German anymore, and that's my mother language. That's the fun part. So that's how deep this habit is rooted in what I'm doing. Even when I'm talking with someone or I coach someone in German, I'm taking notes in English. So that's just these small habits will get you to a completely different state of mind, a completely different way of thinking. That's why, additionally to reading, English is one of the habits which helped me most in my career, because I wouldn't be where I am today with all the knowledge. I wouldn't have had this amazing career without English, because speaking only German doesn't help you to be in a global company in that position where I was. So it's just fascinating how this small habit helped me to be a very, very successful in a very big company. And now as well, I'm working 100% in English. My whole business is in English except the German tax accounting. Yeah, that's my other habit.
Cool. So I'm just going to tie a few things together here, Jens, and I love the example that you picked to talk about the habit, and specifically around language and the environment that you created to do that. So if you think about a simple example of changing the language on your mobile phone, something that you interact with on a daily basis, which is a small compounding habit that then created an environment for you to get better at your English going forward. And now if you think about that from an environment where you want to learn something, and language does link into and tap into different parts of your brain, which helps you develop your thinking into different spheres and things like that. And before we hit the big red button to go live this morning, Jens and I were talking about different books that we've read over time and things like that. And one of the books that came up was Matt Walker's book, which is titled Why We Sleep. And we were just riffing quickly on why that's so important and what different parts of the brain is stimulated by different contexts, by different environments and things like that. And if you use the example of language, how could we use that lesson from just the principles that you spoke about in terms of consciously creating an environment where you could improve your English to learn different skills? And I think sometimes when we go into work environments, and specifically maybe even within ourselves, we become comfortable with what we know. And how can you potentially set up your habits to change and learn something new to bridge through uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable environments where you aren't comfortable in speaking in English, for example, or you aren't comfortable presenting in front of a live audience. If you take this live session, for example, wind the clock back 6 months and ask Jens and I to jump on a live session just when we started our podcast, we probably wouldn't be talking much sense right now. But it's by putting ourselves in that situation where we're constantly learning from feedback, listening to different things, learning from others, which is a great example in terms of how we can use the information age to enhance our thinking, enhance our ability to do things that we may 6 months ago not have been as comfortable doing.
Yeah. And to that point, it's also doing this as a habit. I mean, for us, podcasting is now almost a habit. We can riff on each other without agreeing on who is saying what. And that didn't work. If we just go back half a year, like you said, that didn't work in the beginning. Like, we really needed to plan out what are we talking about? What is the flow? What is the details? And now we have a system that's just a habit of us. And we are, of course, fine-tuning that system without even talking about it. But we are able to riff on each other and jump into we see where the other person comes from and then take it to the next level, or question things in different ways, just because we have done it so often. And I think I agree. I mean, it's maybe a big habit for a lot of people already, but there's smaller things where you do this continuously and you just put yourself out in a different way will help you to do huge things going forward. And that's really where I think as well, if we tie this back to how leaders of today can learn from leaders of tomorrow, is this engagement opportunity everyone has. Everyone knows someone who is younger, and everyone knows someone who is older or more experienced and less experienced, if we just take that one. So you always have the possibility to be the experienced thinker, and you always have the possibility to be the young thinker. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 18, you have kids. They're younger than you are. And you have a lot of people who are more experienced than you are. If you're 60, you have a lot of people who are less experienced than you, but you as well have a couple of people who are more experienced than you. So you can always be working in both directions. And that's for me also something which you can establish as a habit. If we just go into that as well, it's like, how do you establish this as a habit that enables you to learn, enables you to have different perspectives, enables you to compound this habits and knowledge and the know-how you have over time. And that's even more important, of course, when you're a young thinker, because you're having your whole life in front of you. And if I consider myself still as a young thinker, because I believe I will be at least working the next 50 years, and I'm just turned 40, because that's how I see the future. We are all getting more healthier and healthier and healthier, I hope at least. And the systems are getting better. So there's a possibility that I can use the compounding knowledge I'm building up right now in 50 years from now. And maybe we still have this podcast running in 50 years from now and having fun.
Yeah, so I want to just dive a little deeper on a few things there, Jens, and ask sort of your opinion and your experience, building off a lot of what you've shared, but around how can habits inform strategy? And what I mean by that is, if you take a step back and you think about the immediate term, you may think it quite daunting just to start something. And you've referenced this in different conversations about just start. So if we use a little example around, you want to read more, what can you do to read more? And I'm not going to try and profess like there are a lot of great books and a lot of great thinkers that you can reference for strategies and ways to do that. I'm more coming from what can we actually learn from doing that? So how can you go about creating an environment inside of that? So if you want to go and learn more about that, you can sign up for James Clear's way of thinking, his newsletter, or go and read his book, Atomic Habits, and think about how that can help you set up an environment where you are then taking a step forward each day, whether it be micro changes that you're making and what does that mean going forward. But Jens, if we look about how can habits inform strategy, and if we take strategy not only from ourselves in terms of what we're trying to change, but in terms of, like you referenced, those small habits about creating an environment where you're engaging cross-generationally between young and experienced thinkers.
Yeah. I mean, strategy for me is always tied to something. So strategy is not a purpose on its own. So there always need to be a bigger purpose behind that. We have referenced that as well a couple of times already in our podcast. So you need to understand where you want to be, what you want to achieve before you build a strategy. And then the habits. So if you have said that, then the strategy is literally helping you to get there. What are the different building blocks that help you and enable you to get to your future, your future situation or future state or whatever you're into? So then the habits are, for me, it's always like the small steps, the learning algorithm that helps you to refine and get better. If we just take the example with podcasting or us riffing on each other, it's just doing that informs yourself how to do that better next time. So like I just mentioned before we started recording, I was listening to our podcast episode, which was launching today. That gives me insights, which I use subconsciously. And that's for me the most important part. Subconsciously in this episode, which I will then use subconsciously in the next one. And if I just do that, building on top of each other. So it's like you said, it's compounding interest from a habit perspective and from a learning perspective. And then if you bring that back to engaging between each other from different generations, that's the same. If you do this more and more and more, you will understand the other perspectives in different ways, which means you will get a broader view of what you're doing. I was just talking to whom did I think it was when I was interviewing Mario from Silicon Valley this week, who is future technology trend researcher. Fascinating. We talked about that when you have been away for a long time from home and lived in different countries and then go back, you have built so much compounding knowledge just by small habits and exposing yourself to different situations that sometimes you don't understand the local. And the local, like for me, we're back in Germany now for a year already, and I still don't get it. because I'm thinking so different. I'm still exposed to the whole world due to what we are doing and what I'm doing in other topics. So this compounding knowledge and this compounding interest of habits, because it's all smaller habits, all small different interaction points you can build up. And then specifically, if we take this to experienced and young thinkers, this will all inform the strategy, because your strategy is kind of the way how you get towards the future. And this small habits enable you to learn, enable you to verify on a day-to-day base. Maybe you need to drop that habit to be able to get to the future. So yeah, long riff.
Not at all, Jens. And I think what you ended on there created a great segue in terms of where I was thinking of taking this next, was around the smallness of the habit inside of the bigger system. And I think sometimes when people think about strategy and they think about how we want to do things or where you want to go, is that they don't necessarily understand the micro processes that need to be created to enact and enable that strategy going forward. Yeah. So if you think about a case in point here, what is one small habit that you could change today that is going to help your future self in 5 years' time? Yeah. And you may have a vision of where you want to be in 5 years' time, but not a clear road around how you want to get there. And one of the great things that I saw this morning on LinkedIn was this year, the World Wide Web and the first web page was created 30 years ago. And the concept of that has evolved. And if you think about how that's evolved, it's evolved because people have started to use it in different ways, and they've adapted and they've shifted and they've moved things around. So when you think about a habit, you may not do that habit in the exact same way in 5 years' time that you start that habit today. But the main thing is that you're starting it and you're being conscious about where you're wanting that to take you. So if we go back and double click on reading, for example, how may you read something today that might help you do a task in next week or in 10 weeks' time, but it's going to inform and provide you with a reference bank or knowledge bank that you can then tap into 5 years down the line. And I think that talks to experience, it talks to relationships, all of those types of things that Jens and I touch on a lot in various conversations. But it's really, Jens, I love the way that you framed it around small things that can form part of, and are often the most crucial part in enacting a bigger strategy going forward, and also in changing yourself in terms of allowing you to gain your ideas, interact with different people and things like that.
Yeah. And if we just take reading as a good example, because for me, it's like, I don't know all of the books I read. I have somewhere a list, which I need to publish one day. But I have no idea of every single book and what every single book is about and all the details. Because I didn't take notes in all of them. I didn't process it afterwards. I have now different strategies on how to do that. So remembering as well, at least the book title, or very important topics of that book. But it's going back to this compounding interest, which is a word we are using quite often lately. But this compounding knowledge, for me, that's maybe why I'm wearing connector today. It's literally, do you connect all the different dots of, let's say, all the 20 books you have read in the last 2 months or year, however much you read, you're cross-referencing all your books. So your brain is doing that automatically. So it doesn't matter if I read, let's say, a sports book, which is helping you to train better, or if I read a business book, or if I read a non-fiction book, or a fiction book, I wanted to say. All of that kind of goes into one big memory bank, memory palace even. And then it's like, I think the interesting part of that is like these connections which are not naturally there and which nobody has, because everyone experienced the world in a different way. Everyone reads a book in a different state, in a different point of time in their life. So everyone will learn something different. And then building all of that together in your brain will enable you to do a lot of things going forward. And that's for me, the interesting part was the smaller habits. It's really something that enables you to bring yourself into a different state, bring yourself into a different world. Seems like Joshua is frozen. Oh, no, yeah, you're back. Slightly technology problems today with the internet, looks like. You back, Joshua? No, he's not back. But let me keep talking. So it's really building all these smaller habits and enabling you to look into how what are the different habits that help you if we tie that back to the strategy. So if you build a strategy with the perspective of you want to do something in the future, and then tie that back to where you are and how do you get to the future, and what are the micro steps you can do on a day-to-day base that help you getting into the future state. And that can be as easy as starting to read 5 minutes per day, or starting to read 10 minutes per day, or listen to an audiobook instead of watching TV, going into other topics where you learn yourself. So there he's back. I was just riffing a little longer than planned.
Yeah, sorry about that. One of
Yeah,
these things with doing live and being so dependent, I guess, on this world that majority of humanity is still figuring out. How do we enhance good connectivity and use this internet world that we now call home? So Jens, I'm sort of just going to build off what you were mentioning at the end there around strategy and bringing things together and whatnot. And it's quite interesting, obviously we've set up this time for these live sessions every Friday to explore how reverse mentorship can enhance and explore different ways of thinking, both for you as an individual and what that means from an organization perspective. And it's quite interesting. One of the questions that you and I both saw this week was around motivation. And it came from a question inside of our WhatsApp group that we've got for our learning community. And it was around, how do you measure success / the value of turning demotivated teams into a motivated one?
yeah.
And I think that the reason I'm bringing that up now is because it fits quite well into this thing about habit formation and around longer term thinking and around compounding interest. And I think sometimes when managers may think of measuring things, measuring success, and a lot of people will say, hey, well, if someone's happy, they're not, how do you measure that? And, both Jens and I shared views in terms of how you can do that. So as we look to wrap things up today, Jens, I thought you could just share just maybe a few points on that and how you can maybe use habits to start breaking down that, strict form of measuring things, and use habits to think about things in a slightly different way.
Yeah, what I as well wrote in our WhatsApp group is happiness, the happiness index of your team. So if you want to have a team that is motivated, measure the happiness of the team members. And that sounds super ridiculous in business. I know that, because I was there, but it's the most important thing ever, and specifically in business. It's important wherever you are, but I think in business, it's because business is always, hey, we need to perform, we need to get things out of the door, we need to do this, we need to do that, and nobody, or far too few people, focus on happiness of the people. And happiness means true happiness. You need to take care, if you're the leader, you need to take care of the people inside of your team. That means understanding them, spending time with them, helping them to grow, helping them to unleash their happiness, because sometimes it's not in the work environment, sometimes it's in a personal environment. So how can you help your employees to be happier as a human being? And I think that's something we need to be and get way better. And same with myself. I did so many mistakes in the past where I wasn't taking enough attention on some people and was spending more with other people. And if you're a leader, you need to do that with everyone in the team, not just one person. So I did a lot of mistakes when it comes to that myself. But that's a way of learning when you do mistakes. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and so the reason that I sort of thought that we could look to wrap this up with that very question was around, because it ties into habits, and how tied together is around saying you need to create a habit of happiness. And inside of that, what that means from building a team and the way of working with yourself, but also working with others, is what small things are you doing to enable people to be happy, because happy people will often produce their best work. And yes, that you may be
100%.
listening to this or seeing us on the video and saying, geez, Josh and Jens, you're just talking about the soft, feely things and how to actually go about measuring this. But I've seen it, and I know Jens has built teams around this, but I've certainly experienced it as a young thinker in terms of when I've felt most comfortable and as though I'm happy in terms of what I'm doing, I've been operating at a far different level to where I've been in situations where I haven't been as happy as I could have been.
Yeah.
And that can often just be about a manager and you yourself about creating a habit that can help with your happiness.
Yeah.
And I think that that's extremely powerful when you think about these small things, especially being in this virtual world that we're doing. How are you checking in with one another? How are you touching base with your teammates? How are you engaging with other thinkers cross-generationally around creating that environment where you can then look to unpack happiness and what does that mean from a bigger picture perspective?
Yeah. Love that. I don't want to riff on that because I think that's a perfect ending for today. It's super important. Joshua, little bit of technical problems today, but that's part of it. I think it was still very, very interesting. A few people listened. They didn't put too much in the chat today, but let's figure out how we engage the people a little bit more in the future. We're still learning every time.
Yeah, we're still learning. And at the end of the day, Jens, like we've referenced before, is we're trying to make a habit of this. Because I think that we've both experienced about when you make habits of things and when you just start, that's how you can often improve. Because I think sometimes when we think about not starting that habit, it's very hard then to look for ways to improve. So I've really enjoyed today's conversation. Thanks again for your time as always, and your ideas and your knowledge that you shared. And it's good to know that you can finally get back to reading books now that you're jetting off to holiday for a week. So look forward to connecting when you're back. Thanks to everyone who listened, and thanks to everyone who's joining us on this journey and helping us figure it out.
Yeah, same to you, Joshua. It's fantastic and it's a lot of fun for everyone waiting for the next week's post. Because I'm on holiday, we take 1 week break on the Reverse Mentor Friday. We will be back. What is it for a date? I don't know. Let me just check. A week after next week.
Yeah, I think it's about the 20th of August.
Yeah, so we will be back Reverse Mentorship Friday live on the 20th of August. So you have plenty of videos and audio recordings in our podcast. So check out the other ones for if you are bored at 11 on the 13th. And of course, as always, reach out to us, shoot us a couple of messages, ask us questions. We are there. Thanks, Joshua, and see you in 2 weeks.